Okay. So, about 6 years ago, a much younger version of myself was browsing the TedTalks webpage when I came across a video by Cesar Koriyama. This is a much younger version of myself. And in this TED Talk by Cesar Koriyama, he talked about his app, 1 Second Every Day, that enables users to create a continuous video journal of their life, each day represented by 1 second of footage. And I saw this TED Talk, and I was instantly inspired. And for the past 6 years, I've taken a 1 second video every single day of my life. And I love this app. Anyone who knows me has probably heard me talk about it before. It encourages me to never let a day go by without finding something worth being the highlight of the day. This is just a brief example of what it looks like. My full video at this point in time is about 30 minutes long. This is where it sits on my phone. It really is a very central piece of who I am. And because of how much I felt for this app and this company, I decided that I wanted to get even more involved. And so to do that, I reached out to the company and amazingly got a response from Cesar Koriyama. And I was asking him for an internship. However, he rejected me simply because they didn't have a position. But I wasn't going to take that, so I pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed for about 8 months until eventually they came back to me and said, Shimon, we'd like to invite you to be our first ever intern. And I'm sure you can imagine how this made me feel. I was absolutely over the moon. I was like, let's go. I made a big Instagram post. I was telling friends. I was telling family. I was absolutely in my element, and I honestly could not have been happier. But if you were to ask me right now how my amazing 1 second every day internship is going, I would reluctantly tell you that after a few months, things started to slow down. They kind of ran out of things for me to do, and they let me down very nicely, but at the end of the day, I got fired. And it felt really bad. It felt like I had failed. And I couldn't really figure out if this was a big failure or a small failure, but I did know one thing. I was kind of embarrassed. People would come up to me and they'd say, hey Shimon, how's that sick 1 second every day internship going? And I found it very easy to talk about the great things about it. The fact that I got to speak face to face with really a hero of mine and tell him that his app has helped change my life, but I really struggled to talk about the bad things, to admit my failure. And at some point I just said, why am I doing this? I know, we all know that failure happens to everybody. Why is it so difficult to talk about? An idea from Justin Brady in Harvard Business Review, he says, given how normal and necessary failures are, you'd think I would embrace my failure as an opportunity to learn. So why am I so afraid to share and talk about it? And it was this idea, these emotions that I was going through that really got me thinking about what I want to focus on today, which is this stigma surrounding failure. Because we don't talk about failure the way that we say we talk about failure. There's a huge disparity between what we practice and what we preach. And as a society, we say that failure is normal, because it is. And we say that we embrace it, and that's a philosophy that we should have. But when it comes down to it and we fail, we tend not to embrace it. We don't talk about it like it's normal. We play it down. We sugarcoat it. We attribute it to external factors. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, but you can see examples of it everywhere. The entire concept of a resume. What are you supposed to do? Sell yourself on a piece of paper. And how do we do that? By putting down just our best accomplishments, our greatest achievements. No hint of a failure. Then you show up to a job interview, and you're probably asked, hey, tell us about a big weakness of yours. Tell us about a time that you failed. The expectation is not that you present an actual weakness or failure and say something like, the work can be, I can be really lazy if the work bores me. No, the expectation is that you take a negative quality and you spin it positively and say something like, motivation can be really tough on projects not in my interest. So I'm constantly looking for ways to put an innovative spin on the work that I do. So they're asking you to talk about a weakness or a failure, but they don't really want to hear a weakness or a failure. Growing up, we're told if at first you don't succeed, try, and try again. But do we really embrace the failures in between each try? I want to try something out. What's your first impression of these 4 people? A, held back a grade. B, got a W on a course. C, failed multiple attempts at their driver's license. D, went to prison at a young age and is now struggling to get a job. Positive or negative first impression? I'd say negative. But is that not the definition of try, try, try again? I thought we were big believers in that. Even here at Maryland, our motto, we tell people to have fearless ideas, to be bold, to take risks, to challenge the status quo in spite of failure. But do we really focus on the journey, or is it the outcome, the success or failure, that we really get judged by? Do we really want fearless ideas, or do they want successful ideas? Now see, the truth is, we do sometimes talk about failure, just usually only after a great success. We love an underdog story. We talk about how J.K. Rowling was rejected 12 times by publishers. Oprah Winfrey was told she wasn't fit for TV. Einstein failed math in 8th grade. Roland Macy had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 failed businesses before opening up his first department store in New York. Harry Kane, a famous English soccer player, was rejected time after time by club after club and is now breaking records for Tottenham Hotspur. You know that Einstein story? That one's not even true. It's a myth. He didn't fail math in 8th grade. But this is a story that is widely circulated and one that we like to tell anyway because of how much we love this narrative of failure to eventual success. And it's crazy because I realized that in a very, very, very small way that I'm literally doing the exact same thing right now. Because yes, I'm talking about my failure with 1 second every day, but I'm only doing it in the context of a Terp talk, something that I'm very proud of and I consider a success. So in some contexts, we do talk about failure. Usually when we can mitigate its negative association to our character, and when it can increase the significance of our success to show in contrast how far we've come. But we're not talking about failure in the moment, when it hurts, when our self-belief is challenged, and when we need the most advice and support. I asked my friends and family publicly on Facebook to share a time that they had failed and told very few or no people. Here's what they said. Failed my driving test. Got cut from the soccer team. Auditioned for America's Got Talent and The Voice. Didn't make us past a single round, told nobody. Didn't get into my dream school, I applied early decision. Didn't get the scholarship I wanted, didn't get into the major that I wanted. I asked these people why they didn't share their failure, and pretty much all of them said some form of the word embarrassment. They said that's just not what we're supposed to do. They said, I don't want to hurt my image. I know failure is normal, but admitting failure is just not a normal thing to do. By not talking about our failures, we artificially raise the bar of expectations that we have of ourselves and of others. We convince ourselves that it's something to be ashamed of. We become insecure, pressured, and even obsessed with only being and being perceived as failure-free. And we can hold ourselves back from trying difficult things that by their nature have a higher likelihood of failure. But failure is not black and white. If there's one thing that I've learned researching this topic, is that there are so many differing opinions out there about failure. Everything from failure is something you should seek out every single day, to failure is good, failure is bad, failure doesn't exist, it's a mess. And in writing this speech, I actually reached back out to Caesar and I asked him some advice. And the first thing that he told to me was, oh my gosh, Shimon, I hope you don't consider your time with us a failure. You created a position for yourself at a company you admire. You became friends with those people. And now you have the opportunity to reach out to an actual TED speaker and get personal advice from him, full of wins. Now don't get me wrong. When I look back on my time with 1 second every day, I'm very grateful for my experience. And many aspects of it were a great success. But if I sugarcoat the bad stuff, if I deny to myself and others that getting fired didn't suck, that some aspects of my experience were failures, then I'm going to suppress those bad feelings and I'm not going to learn to do anything differently next time. I'm going to contribute to this culture of hiding our failures and maintaining the illusion of perfection. And if we do this for even the small things, if you consider this a small failure, how much more so am I going to feel the need to do it for a big failure? This stigma, it's not going to change overnight. But overnight, you can decide to share your next failure with the people that you know. And overnight, they can decide to share their next failures with the people that they know. And very slowly, we can create for ourselves our own culture of quite fearlessly sharing our failures. Let's start talking about our failures in the moment, especially to each other and especially in the moment, and actually start treating failure the way that we say we do. Something that, yes, feels pretty bad, but is normal, not to be ashamed of, not to be afraid of. Something that should never stand in the way of trying again. Something signaling that you're aiming for difficult and lofty goals. Something that really is fearless.